So normally I don't do the long interviews. I call them long form, but Wayne Lance, the former coach at Liberty Christian Academy, now he's at Atlantic Shores. We hadn't talked in a million years, and I honestly think I met him through a mutual friend, Jared Brooks. And Jared was broadcasting LCA at the time. I met Wayne Lance. I'm not going to say we were best friends because that would insult him, but I really respected Coach Lance. Again, shame on me for not getting him on before now. And as you know, the sports buffet is not just limited to the 434 of Lynchburg. Obviously, that's where I focus some needs, but that's not the only place. We'll have Lance, easy for me to say, we will have Wayne Lance on again in the future, but hear him talk about Stab, who comes up on Friday. Hear him talk about more things related to football, about kind of his young sports fandom and more right here on the Sports Buffet podcast. Always love to have Wayne Lance on the Sports Buffet podcast. Now, a little bit of a retro history here. I believe I met you when you were coaching at LCA.
Most likely. I'm pretty sure that's when we met. Yeah.
And that's been quite a few years ago.
Quite a few.
And you just reached 150 at Atlantic Shores.
Yeah.
And I've never had you on the podcast, so shame on me. This is a big shame on me right now.
Well, I'm not a current, 434 guy or Western Virginia guy. So I'm a throwback. I'm a fill-in. When you can't get somebody else on the line, I'm a good call.
That's absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. Let's talk about 150. You just picked it up recently. Did it feel any different?
I joked with somebody, if you coach for 100 years, you might get 150 wins. But I guess it does. It causes me. I've had a lot of points of reflection recently. Like we had a game at VES, and we played Roanoke Catholic. So I've come through town a couple times, as I like to say. And there's always guys who show up and support me and my team and my son, and get to see my wife. And it's pretty awesome to be able to touch base with those guys and just see how they're doing, and talk about where we are and where we were and things like that. So it's always a point of reflection. I've had a great group of people that I've gotten to coach and be around and built long-lasting relationships. And unfortunately, with 150 wins, you have some losses too that probably stand out more than some of the victories. And probably more recently, I've learned to just appreciate and relish the victories, even if it's for a day before I move on, and instead of go right to the next thing and not have some time to just reflect. So I've done a better job with age, probably more so than I used to, but I think there's just a lot of special ones that stand out, and more so the players. Just such a great group of guys each time, and great group of coaches that I've been able to be around and share this life with. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reflection that goes on. There's not too much time with a great team coming into town this week, but it's cool.
Before we talk about the current events, let's talk one more thing. After you mentioned, I mean, you can't get 150 in one day. It takes a while to get there. How do you keep the passion?
I've just always loved the game. I think when I was a kid, I can remember different events from my youth, like faking sick so I could watch the 1982 NFL draft. When I realized it came on TV, I was like in second grade. My mom figured out I was lying. I got in a little bit of trouble. She's like, just tell me. And NFL Films probably plays an even bigger part of that because of the number of VHS tapes I would record all the Super Bowls and stuff. So there was this passion as a young kid. And then when I actually went to college and had to start figuring out what I might do with my life, I came across coaching in a catalog. And it's like, wait, you can major in, obviously you don't major in coaching, but it was like the light bulb. And I think some of that becomes the strategy, the game itself, new ways to invent things or try things, but also the people and the opportunity to impact lives. I realize that football is kind of a little different than most sports. And so I think there's some uniqueness about it. There's a brotherhood, there's a fun, there's a family environment. And I probably said this for a long, long time. I can remember Dennis Carter interviewing me years ago, and talking about teaching life lessons. And I had a former player say something to me when we visited Lynchburg just about, I don't know if I would have made it through these circumstances had I not been in 90-degree heat in pads. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I can get through this. Like, I've gritted it out. And I know those things make you smile a little bit and just realize, like, this is pretty cool. And, my family has been such a great support. Even in their, as they've gotten older and their careers have started, they come back or they call and ask about the games. And, my wife's involved as she can. So it really makes it, I try to think what life would be like without it. And I know that time will come, but we kind of always joke that if I go, just dig the hole and roll me in it. Don't use a timeout if you don't have to. So I don't know. God gave me a passion for it. And I've tried to find other ways to use it and to impact people and my family and different things. And so, and then the relationships that come from it outside of it, whether it's coaches you meet and people you meet or coaches I work with, it's just been a really awesome way to spend my days.
How much has the game changed since you started?
Man, it's changed a lot. I actually was talking to Vince Brown, who was a player when I was an assistant at EC Glass, and now he's the head coach at the apprentice school. And we were talking today, actually, and we were just talking about the physicality and the style, the passion, I don't know, like we were just talking about the lack of physicality and how it's changed a little bit, what you can do sometimes by just being the more physical team. But that's hard to practice. There are elements that have not changed. But the game kind of evolves, and much like fashion, some things come back, just maybe in different styles. Power run game and things like that, certain defenses. Some people have a lot of success just being the most physical group out there. Some people use speed. And maybe it was just done differently. Then there's the aspects, I would say, outside of the game, the social media aspects. A lot of times I'll talk with kids, just, it doesn't matter the sport, just kids in general. And they're so worried about posting something on Instagram. And I'm like, well, your friends and family see it on Instagram. Coaches aren't going to find you on Instagram. They're going to find you on Twitter. Like there's a certain like dynamic of how it works. And so I think that aspect has changed a little bit. Recruiting has changed a ton because of the transfer portal. I was talking with a former college coach the other day. He's like, what I thought I knew and what happens now, like I feel like a dinosaur. Like this kid should have an offer and this kid should have an offer, but they don't because everybody's going to wait on the transfer.
Right.
And so it's changed drastically in those senses. But one of my assistant coaches, who was once an opponent, pulled out a Bible verse, and there's a point where Solomon says there's nothing new under the sun, and people are people. There are times we don't want to go do things because it's hot and you're tired and you're cranky, and there's times when it's like you're fired up and ready to go. So in those aspects, there really isn't much new. Maybe it just looks a little different, or it's a little shinier, or comes in a different model. But I can definitely see what he was talking about too. So yeah, it's changed.
Before we get to this Atlantic Shores team, is there one person you were looking for when you skipped school to watch the AE2 draft?
No, that was just, I just wanted my Steelers to get good players. I was just fascinated by it because, like, I was that kid. My parents, I was kind of caught in the toy phase. It was Star Wars, and then it was probably too early for G.I. Joe at that point in time. Those were kind of my things. I was a big Super Friends fan and Underdog when it came to cartoons, so there really wasn't much there. But then, like, football was a thing, and like, I'm starting to date myself. I remember being 7 and watching the Miracle on Ice.
Mm-hmm.
And like I ran out to my mom, we won. And she's like, if there's anything you ever want to watch on TV, there's a lot of junk, but you can always watch sports.
Right.
And like, I took that to heart. That was my card. But you said I could watch this. And so it's kind of one of those things, like I just always had a passion for it. So like they would buy me NFL Digest subscriptions for our Football Digest subscriptions for Christmas because I would read them cover to cover, and then I go back and read the old ones. I had all the cards. So probably at that time, not even knowing how this thing worked, I just wanted to watch and see the process. And then like, hey, we got this guy? And I'm
Right.
like, who is that? Why did we take a defensive lineman or a running back? And I think that was the year we drafted Walter Abercrombie out of Baylor in the first round. That
Well,
really didn't work out so
and
well,
now
but
it's more of why didn't we take an offensive lineman?
yeah, yeah.
So,
It's
go ahead.
it's no, it's always funny to go back and look now because I joke with my kids because hey, we're watching the draft, it's on. They're like, okay, Dad. Like, but then my kids will always go, who do we get? Like they
Right.
call back to find out too. So we have a pretty good laugh about it. But I know where I'm going to be on Thursday nights now. I can't even take a day off to enjoy.
Yeah.
Some people it's March Madness. For me, it was the NFL draft.
Right. Opening day for me in baseball, but yeah, it's a totally different.
Yeah,
And like you said, sports used to be always that thing you could watch and not have to worry about it. But now in the days we play in now, it to me sports is different because we've got so many things that preoccupy it, ceremonies, and I'm not trying to get political, but there's so
right.
much stuff. There's so much stuff.
Yeah.
We can't just watch a game anymore.
Well, it's become the avenue that it's what we are watching, and people
Hmm.
are willing to spend money, whether it's to advertise or to make statements,
Yep.
and on whatever side. And so I think it's kind of awesome in that sense. And at the same time, it can be distracting if you're just trying to go watch a game. And then as you go up levels, the cost is even getting to be more in the pageantry and then some of the distractions that go with it. So, but it's definitely become a thing in our country, way more so than what it used to be. So,
Tell me about Atlantic Shores football and what stands out.
um, got a great group of guys, great group of coaches, great group of players. We have been growing together a lot. We started off the year 1-4, just trying to, I guess, find ourselves and figure out who we are. And um, through that, through some experiences, through some injuries and return, we've built some depth and some different things in our program. But really having fun. I think just figuring out what we're going to do each week, and coming together as a group and trying to execute it and see how we can make plays and celebrate each other's successes and try to help each other correct our failures.
Have you figured out who you are?
Yeah. It's one of those questions each week because, like I tell everything, snowflakes are uh, very unique.
Hmm.
Each game plan is its own thing. So depending on what you're trying to accomplish each week, we've been able to figure that out more recently as to maybe where we can have success and maybe the things we should stay away from. And so I think that's the biggest thing. We spend a lot of time doing 7-on-7s in the off season, like in the spring when the leagues down here become available, and then we'll hit a couple college ones. But I know it's like football on grass, and or like it's not real football, but it gives me an opportunity to learn my players. And so usually when we have success doing that, and I can figure out who guys are, then when we actually put pads on, it's a lot easier to transition into, okay, this guy's skill set is this. And um, so we've had some younger guys kind of come up through and really make some headway. But it was just been a matter of learning each guy and where they can bring us success and what we can do to limit their failures. And so I think we've gotten closer to that point where we are who we are, and we got to rely on our strengths and minimize our weaknesses, and playing sound football.
How how good is
Not try,
staff, by the way?
very good, very good, well coached, huge up front. Great skill guys. It's definitely, they're one of the top two teams in the state for a reason. Um, I think a lot of people would love to see them play North Cross sooner than later, and so um, yeah, I mean, Coach Miller's done a great job in creating a culture and a successful one at that. And those guys are disciplined. They play great football and they hustle. And so it's definitely a huge task to play a quality opponent like that.
Final thing, I promise we won't wait however 100 years or whatever to do this again. If I said to you, who is Wayne Lance? How do you answer that?
I don't know. I don't usually think about myself. I don't like to. That sounds very cliche. Or um, I I don't know. I've got a lot of sides to me. Um, I'm a dad and a husband and I love Jesus. And then there's the football coach in me that is those things. So there's that parent in me when I coach, in the sense of, these are my guys, this is my family. Um, there is the crazy zany side that likes to have fun and created a YouTube channel and TikTok channel to kind of have some fun and poke fun at the things we do as coaches. Um, so I don't know. I like to have a lot of fun. I like to teach life lessons. I'm a teacher at heart. Um, I don't know. That's a great question. Probably be better to ask my wife, but I'd be afraid of the answer. But yeah, I just a fun-loving guy who loves to see people succeed and wants the best for everyone. That's,
Well,
I
I
guess,
like the answer because you didn't bring up football first. You brought up the person first, as opposed
yeah,
to, I think if you go to a party, which I'm sure you're invited to a lot of them, that you go around and they'll say, what do you do? And you say, well, I'm a coach, or I'm a dentist, or I'm a,
yeah,
doctor, or whatever. But, when you say who is somebody, I think it's so much to identify by what they do as opposed to who they are. So good answer.
yeah. No, I was blessed. Both of my parents have passed recently, and
Hmm.
I've had a lot of time to reflect. And maybe when I was a kid, I did not appreciate my upbringing, or like, well, this kid has this, and I look back now, and I'm probably more like my mom in a lot of ways than I care to admit, jokingly. She was quite a personality and a spitfire in some ways, and always had a pun for something. So I get accused of a lot of dad jokes, but to me, they were mom jokes. And then my dad was that hardworking son of a coal miner who went to work every day. And I was probably angry that I didn't see him as much as a kid. And now I understand as a dad, like, I'm here probably later than I should be. I'm doing some things so my guys can have success. And having had my kids be in the school I'm working at, probably a little easier to maintain my relationships with them, but and not so much with my wife, because I'll work a little more than I probably spend home. But like, it's those things that I guess I can say a blue collar mentality that just makes me appreciate the hard work I was taught as a kid, and to just keep grinding in some ways. I think that's the phrase we use today. So like, yeah, there's those things, but my dad would also be quick to tell you, like, he's not a government employee. He's Wayne Lance Senior, and he was proud of that. And so like, I think of those things, and just being able to reflect on my parents a lot more recently, and thinking like, this is why they were the way they were, and this is why they were trying to raise me a certain way. So I guess, having that time to look back on has been really important, as I'm now in my early 50s, and just trying to figure out, like, what are those lessons I can pass on to kids. So it's more about those things than football lands. I've learned that a lot recently. I have a young man who played for me a number of years ago, went and played in college, and now he's boxing for Team USA.
Nice.
And he picked it up, and just, it's a great story. But he made me realize, like, football ends, coach, and it's who we are afterwards that really counts. And so it makes me think of those lessons and those tough practices that he and I would go at it, because he'd keep going off sides, and I'd punish the team instead of him, just to try to teach some of those lessons. And now he jokes about how soft he was, because he'd get mad about that. And he's like, I should have just been mad and fixed it myself. And it now those guys, the Rashad Jennings, the Tyler Tipton, the Kelvin Watts, they're teaching, and even my own kids, they're teaching me the lessons and how to relate to younger people. And so makes life exciting. And those are the things that kind of carry me on each day, when I can learn something new, and just kind of like, not everybody is the same person. They don't all go for the same speech my coach gave me. I need to be a lot of things to a lot of people. And so I don't know, it's just kind of what I've learned along the way. So
I
I
promise
love it.
I promise I won't make it so long next time. And you're kind of like Shrek because you opened up a layer that we have for future interviews. So I definitely appreciate
Onions.
that.
No, I need to call and interview you, and see what you've been up to. I
I'm
mean, I
boring.
keep up on,
I'm boring.
you get around, you're impacting a lot of people just by the things you're doing and
Appreciate that.
reaching out. And it's important, because I think a lot of times people don't know the stories. I make these videos and I post them on, stuff parents say in the crowd and stuff. I think sometimes people think I'm like picking at a certain group. No, like, I went to an Indian River Salem playoff game years ago, and I sat there in the crowd like I was just studying offenses, and I just started hearing these things, and I started writing. I mean, they were funny, but I just started writing them down, and then a coach and I made stuff coaches say, which became like different things, excuses players make, stuff officials say, take it to whatever ends, or stuff we shouldn't say, or stuff they never say, like let's bring your girlfriend to practice day, like things like that. And it's become funny, but at the same time, like I realize how serious we take these things, but nobody knows that side of a coach. They just think we're all geared a certain way. Or having coached my own kids, I've had people ask me like if I'm geared towards just making them shine, and it's the last person I need to see, because I know what comes with that for a lot of people are the perception. So a lot of times you're fighting perception, and it's interviews like this and in many other ways where you can shine some light and shed some light on questions people have, and they don't get to see a side of coaches that they assume maybe. I learned that years ago when I would go to Pittsburgh, being a huge Steelers fan. And I'm sorry if I'm hijacking your show,
No,
but
you're fine.
I'm listening to talk radio in Pittsburgh, being a Steeler fan, and it was Cowher back then. Like, he needs to go. They've been saying that in Pittsburgh about every coach because there's an expectation. But at the same time, like I realize, like if I'm really going to do this on a high level, I'm going to be criticized because it matters to people. But at the same time, like I'm realizing, like this guy's home with his wife. It was like the off season. Like he's just trying to build a winner. He's not who everybody says he is. He's not trying to do in his team.
Right.
Yeah, but here's the players he's been given to work with. So now what can he do with it? And so I've always realized the human side of it. And yeah, I don't know. It's interviews and conversations that I think people can realize, like, yeah, they have families they go home to, and they eat, sleep, and breathe like everybody else, and they really want everybody to have success if they can. So
Was this
yeah,
before we got into like the mental health part of America? Because I mean, I feel like a lot of people became a lot more golden rule-ish at that point, to where other
nah,
times I think people just could cuss somebody up down a storm, not even knowing if they wanted to be cussed. I mean, because a lot of people will say the old school football coach could
oh yeah,
ride somebody up and down. It's not going to bother him, but do it today with a new school person, maybe not going to have the same effect. You know what I'm saying? So
no,
was it in that time frame?
yeah, I think so. I mean, I started coaching in what, '96, but like the kids I were coaching, I just remember where they were coming up from in Lynchburg, the Linkhorn and
Right.
Dunbar kids that were, man, they taught me some things, and I'm still close to those guys till this day. They'd come over to the house, and I was like, wait, what? It's what? Oh, okay. Like, and yeah, they could take it a little differently, but I think we're also maybe more self-aware. I think social media has kind of brought some of this out, and in good ways. Like we've taken a concerted effort to kind of learn a little bit more. Um, yeah, maybe there is a softer side in some respects. Um, I don't know. I just I roll with the punches a lot, so like I'm learning and just understanding that
It's a
you know
different
it,
world.
it is, and it continues to change. Like I said, my dad was the son of a coal miner. He didn't finish high school, and just hearing the stories about his upbringing and the things that happened in his house, like I was fortunate. He made things a little better for me, and so um, I don't know. There's a grit and toughness you hope to push on to get on to other kids, and that's the beauty of the game. But then there's just a general. I think sometimes maybe the softer. I probably noticed a bigger swing when it came to football, like when the movie Concussion came out,
Hmm.
and everybody was more aware. But now there's other sides to that. Um, those studies, and as we've had time to do more research, and so it's just been interesting, and parents are as willing to spend the time and do the things they would prefer maybe their kids spend their time in other avenues. And so yeah, I think it just looks different. um,
Would you be pro football for your kid? You have a son and a daughter, correct?
I have 3 sons and
Three
two
sons. Okay.
daughters.
Would you be more? Wow, you've got a whole Brady bunch going there.
Yeah, seriously.
Would you be more apt to not wanting your kids to play football if you weren't a football coach? Does that make sense?
It does. I I don't know. I've seen what it has done for so many kids,
Right.
whether it's the educational aspect for providing an opportunity for them to go to college for kids who never would have otherwise. I've seen the aspects. I think a lot of times there is an overreaction. Um, like my daughter, like flag football is becoming a thing, and my
Sure.
my oldest daughter just graduated college. She was a college volleyball player, and she's like, I wish we had flag football. Like the conference she would have been in is starting it. And I'm like, hey, I think you still got a year of eligibility. So we've kind of joked about it, but I think she would have loved it. Um, my younger daughter, maybe as well. Like they're volleyball track girls, and they have had opportunities to go and do other things athletically as well. Um, but yeah, I definitely think so. I think a lot of times now it depends on who the coach is. And parents have a lot of questions about how practices are run and the safety and the equipment and stuff, but that's just more of education and saying, hey, here's what we do, here's how we run practice. Practice is way more softer now. I have a coach on my staff who played for me when I first got here. And I can remember doing two-a-days with those guys. And I think we were full pads every practice. And like if we went helmets, my assistant coach was, yeah, what are we doing? And now like I don't go back to back days in full pads, but I teach it different, and the kids have a lot more fun with it. And if they're not having fun, they're less likely to do it. And that's kind of been more culturally where we've gone with it, and we've still found a way to have success. Maybe sometimes I feel like we're a little more behind in the physical aspect because of the amount of contact, but our bodies are fresher. So we try to weigh those things and just approach it from a different angle. And that way we can also ensure, because you want to be able to finish uh, the season, you want to be able to finish your practices and keep everybody healthy, so you have a full roster for game night where you can do many more things than if you just have 12 guys and you're hoping Timmy makes it back from a strained hamstring.
Did you
So
ever do the Oklahoma drill?
I do variations.
Mm-hmm.
We tackle a lot without bodies, which has its own problems because people do cut back and do different things. So we've tried to do some different things.
And real quick, I'm going to
Um,
let you explain for people that don't know it. What is the Oklahoma drill?
so everybody has a different term of Oklahoma drills.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I was growing up, one guy would get the ball
Yep.
and we'd start 5 yards away
Mm-hmm.
and you just had to tackle him. There was like a tunnel you couldn't run outside of, and it was just open field, make a tackle. Um, It usually would, like, sometimes it would start when you were on your back, you blew a whistle, you
Yep.
had to get up and make a tackle.
Yep.
Then it would move to space, and my coaches would then put us at 10 yards, and then they'd add bodies,
Right.
and it'd be like defeat the block, make the tackle. Then it was 2-on-2, and it wasn't so much that you were doing this because this is what you were going to do in a game, but sometimes it just got to the point of do it again, do it again. You can go on YouTube, like we'll watch every year before we do any kind of our like opening day of contact. We'll watch other teams Oklahoma's like from 19 or not 19 from like 2014. There's stuff on YouTube and they're kind of funny to watch because the technique is awful. And I use it to teach my guys, like, you cannot lower your head. You have to see what you're doing. You have to put your body in this position because now we've taken so much contact out of it. Even if we're tackling a bag or landing on a mat, it's just the technique with which you do it. But now it's a live body, so all the doubt creeps back in.
I
So if
think
your
it's been
kids are
done in Hollywood too, in some movies, like maybe Rudy or Remember the Titans or something,
oh
where
yeah,
one guy basically, I would, if you asked me as a layman, I would call Oklahoma, a hitting drill because you
yeah,
essentially want your tacklers to, you know, lay wood to the running back, so to speak, or the ball
yeah,
carrier. Not that you didn't do a good job explaining it. I'm just kind of like,
no,
basing it down. Like,
exactly,
it's a hitting drill is the way I look
right,
at it. And
right,
nowadays, you have to be like Wayne Lance and variate it a little bit, or you're not
yeah.
doing it.
Well, and there is an element of injury, and that's where it's just we want to repeat certain movements till we're comfortable, and those guys are confident. Confident kids tackling are better tacklers, no matter what you do. But now you throw a kid who's really fast, the stab running back, perfect example. Kid runs a 10-900, he can fly. And now I'm running at that running back in an actual game, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to wrap this guy up? So I stop my feet, I miss, and I grab air. So it's that fine line between finding the middle ground and creating confident guys. And so part of that's in the weight room, part of that's outside, part of that's finding other things to hit other than bodies. And I tell a lot of guys, like, it's not the contact body to body, it's body to ground.
Right.
Like, the ground doesn't move. The body in air, it kind of gives. And, you can have some injury that way, but most of the time, not as much. I have more guys who get hurt when they hit the ground over time. So, put a mat down and teach it until we get it right.
I think old school Oklahoma is we're going to put Lawrence Taylor and Jack Lambert on one side, and we're going to give it to the third string running back on the other side.
Yeah.
So
That largely that was the case.
right.
And so, like, we found a way to make it more about blocking and not so much like the close contact, like O line to D line. We put a board to make sure their feet aren't crisscrossing. We're just trying to push and move, but it's very controlled and very consolidated and very as safe as you can be. We're always teaching to keep our guys up, which gets to be difficult when you're in a game because the job is to knock the other guy down. But anything to do to keep it safe and have fun, and when parents are confident that their kid is being taken care of, and it's as safe as you can make it given what the sport to be. Because we've seen injuries in other sports. I see concussions all the time in soccer. I've seen girls with my daughters playing volleyball get concussions by getting hit in the head with a volleyball. I have had 3 concussions in my life. None were from football, unless you count my 3-year-old son tackling me on the couch and putting his forehead right in my chin on the side. And next day I'm like, why does my head hurt? And the assistant coach goes, your son hit you last night. That's what that is. And I'm like, no way. Yeah, it was. But like, I've had stuff from car accident, like that kind of stuff than I have actually playing sports. So it's just a matter of things happen. We move on, we educate ourselves, and we keep going. And a lot of people who've played a lot of football that are very, very well spoken about it, and can probably do much more better than me stumbling through it. But the game is probably as safe as it's ever been, and there are injuries in all sorts of areas. So we as coaches, it's incumbent upon us to educate, teach, and strengthen our kids, and make sure those necks are strong, make sure the bodies are strong, and put them in safe, controlled environments, and hopefully they're ready to go by Friday night.
But I'm glad you're not a doctor, because if you were a doctor, we're going to get all the technical, hubbub terms. And I mean, honestly, in any situation, I think when we get beyond having real talk, human to human, the conversation is somewhat lost.
Yeah, I think, man, we can have another.
Well, we
show
will.
on
Trust
this
me.
Well, and that's where being a Steeler fan growing up, and when I saw the movie Concussion, for example, like, I know those guys, I had all their cards, and then like I look at a guy like Joe Green who went up against Mike Webster every day, and
Right.
I know there's risk in things, and I also know at the time there was a lot of steroid use and a lot of other things going on. So, like, that's why I always say, like, we've educated ourselves
Sure.
so much better than
Maybe
here's
overeducated
some
sometimes.
pads. The equipment, like, I'm sitting in my equipment room right now, and I look at some of these helmets that we're buying, and they're over $500 per helmet, and mine was a bucket, and
Right.
I was happy I got a certain face mask. And I look back at those helmets and think, like, yeah, there was definitely a higher risk, but now they've just been made to almost kind of like race cars, where they don't break apart, but
Yeah.
obviously the whole point is to defray energy and things like that. So you can add a Guardian cap on. Is it really helping? No, but, well, maybe a little bit. They've said it defrays the energy a little bit, but I just make sure my kids have the best I can put them in, and go from there.
But
So,
then, and I'll close it with this, then we're getting into what's the most traumatic moment ever in auto racing history? Dale Earnhardt.
yeah.
And I mean, I don't want there to be a football player who has to have that type of
Yes.
moment
Yes.
in order for us to, because that's not going to be a good conversation.
No, Damar Hamlin, and even though it wasn't necessarily helmet related, it was just one of those moments where you remember where you were when that happened. There's those moments in sport where you can think of various things that have occurred.
Yeah, but DeMar Hamlin's not a big fish either in terms of, he's not Dale Earnhardt.
Right.
So,
Right.
but I don't need it to happen to I mean, I'll go old school a little bit. Emmitt Smith, if he had been hurt in his prime, that doesn't need to happen. So anyway.
Well, and that's the thing as a football coach, when those things happen, or even Kevin Ware playing basketball and breaking his leg, like, to me, those are moments where you're like, how do you prevent, like, that's my brain always goes like, what would happen if these things happen? Like, how would I handle it? And that's just, to me, the education of a coach, like just being aware, having a plan, knowing your plan, having great people around you, trainers and such that can evaluate. And, like all three of my boys have played football.
Right.
And we love it, and they love it for their own reasons. And, we try to make it as safe and possible for them, and 100% confident that we've done is, and when they've been hurt for different reasons, took them to the doctor, got them better, and let them come back out. So like, it's, there's a lot to it. That's a deep conversation, but
we'll do it again. I promise. That's part of it, because, and you need to have those conversations even when it gets to be uncomfortable, because we're never going to have growth or, I mean, I get you can watch movies until you're blue in the face, but
Right. No, you're right.
So.
And there's context and meaning, if you read the transcript back of what we said, like, that's why I'm always cautious, because I'm very aware of the risks and the issues. But again, I always talk to my team out in front of our school. It's a 2-lane road.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about trust as a team and building trust, I said, what separates you from running into another car driving down Centerville?
Sure.
Nobody knows. I'm like, it's yellow paint. That's it. Like, there's no barrier, there's no wall, there's no nothing. It's yellow paint. You trust that the other guy has your back and he's going to stay in his lane, and you need to be alert and aware when he isn't. And I think of all those like life lessons. I mean, apply it to all the other sports and all the other, like the shortstop is trusting the second baseman. He's going to catch the ball and flip it over to first for a double play. Like, there's a certain level of trust, and you practice those things. And I think the same thing when it comes to sports and ball, and just training our athletes to making sure, because there's just as many people who are concerned about knee injuries and head injuries and shoulder injuries and different things. And so that's where it becomes incumbent upon us to be great coaches and great at what we do, and not just chasing the wins and the highlights. It's, if it's truly what we are meant to do and meant to be, it's much bigger than those things.
Hundreds of future topics to talk about. I hope you'll come back and do it again.
Whenever you need me, I got you.
So it's funny, I'm a big pro wrestling fan, and I was listening to a pro wrestling podcast done by Maven Huffman, and he had Matt Lyda on. Now, Matt Lyda is the former co-host on 6 Feet Under with Mark Calloway, who you might know better as The Undertaker if you're a pro wrestling fan. Well, if you're a pro wrestling fan, again, one of the Undertaker's most famous matches was the Hell in the Cell with Mick Foley. And Matt Lyda often said to him, hey, why don't you call Mick and see if he'll come on the show? And Mark Calloway said, well, I don't want to bother him. And that's kind of the way I feel about coaches during season of I don't want to bother them. But I can tell you, Wayne Lance, former coach at LCA, and you just heard him talk about probably 400 future episodes that we could do. He has so many stories, too, because he's been around the block in terms of he's been around the state. He's been around for 150 games. You heard him say that. And when you've been around for that length of time, you have stories. And stories, look, I'm a sports history fan, and I know there are other people out there like me, bless their hearts. But there are other people out there that are sports history fans too, and they enjoy to hear the quote-unquote stories from the old days. Well, we'll get Wayne Lance back on much more, and obviously he can talk about anything he wants to talk about. But we will look to really deep dive into a lot of stories once football season's over for some of those football coaches. Brad Bradley from Heritage already told me he would do it as well. And again, Coach Bradley, a lot of stories to tell because he's been around the state. And that's the great thing about the Sports Buffet. With the internet, unlimited access, we can do, for lack of a better term, and when I say we, I mean me, the unlimited bandwidth, can do what I want to. So keep listening. Hope you listened to this episode. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will talk to you soon. This is Bob Alvis on the Sports Buffet Podcast.